Okay, I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting for February 14th, 2013. I'd like the record to show that all commissioners are present, and I would like to ask Commissioner Brower to lead us in the pledge. Thank you, Commissioner Brower. Okay, this brings us to the public comments portion of the meeting. This is an opportunity for the public to address the Planning Commission on items that are not on the agenda for this evening. So if anybody has a non-agendized item they'd like to address us on, please fill out a request to speak form, and we'll be happy to hear you. Seeing none, this brings us to the presentation items. And it looks like we don't have any presentation items for this evening, so that'll move us on to the consent calendar.
Move to approve. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none? Carries. Okay, this will bring us to the public hearings portion of the meeting. The first item is the wireless master plan, and we have a request on this item to move it to the February 28th meeting. I don't think we need to make a motion on that, do we? Council? Do you do? Okay.
I'll move that we move this to the February 28th meeting of the Planning Commission.
Have a second?
I'll second.
We have 2 seconds. That should carry then. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. This brings us to item number 3, the planned sign program 12-12-30-32 for the entry monument signs for Shea Ranch development.
Good evening, Commissioners. Carrie Ty has a report on this item this evening.
Good evening, Chairman Hughes and members of the Planning Commission. This item was continued from the January 10th, 2013 meeting, and it was concurrently discussed with the master landscape plan for this development. The master landscape plan was approved at that meeting, but the Planning Commission continued this plan sign program application to request additional information. And just for the benefit of the new commissioners and audience members, just a quick background. The Shea Ranch development is that large development you see over on Alton Parkway and Bake Parkway there that's currently being graded. It's a master plan community with 2,300 79, I think the exact number is, homes. And Alton Parkway, the new part of Alton Parkway in our city, actually bisects that site. So there's a portion on the other side of Alton that is not being graded yet. So it's a large site, about 387 acres minus Alton, 372. Did I say that right? Including Alton, and then 372 minus Alton. So the proposed plan sign program is to allow entry monumentation at 5 points on the site, and 3 of those 5 are called community arrival locations, and they are the larger kind, and then 2 are the secondary locations. And I'll just go over where they are. The 3 community arrival locations are actually existing, they're existing intersections. The first is at Alton Parkway and where Rancho Parkway, where Town Center ends now and where Rancho Parkway South will be continued to. The second location is at Alton Parkway and Commerce Center Drive, and the third location is Bake Parkway at Dimension Drive. These 3 intersections are proposed to have entry monuments with signs for the Baker Ranch development. The applicant is not proposing interior individual community signs, and so these would be it for the Baker Ranch community. The configuration of each entry monument at the community arrival locations would be a L-shaped low-stacked stone wall. So these are about 4 to 6 feet tall, with the stacked stone that you see out at AJ West. And then it intersects with a 10-foot tall wall with pin-mounted letters on it, and that would say Baker Ranch, and then there would be smaller letters with Lake Forest underneath that. And each monument would be constructed into a slope to create a planter area, and then there's landscaping that frames the monument. And then moving on to the secondary locations, these are future intersections. They have not been constructed yet, but they would be from Alton Parkway at 2 signalized intersections that will be constructed hopefully a couple years down the road. And these will only have the low-shaped sackstone walls tucked into the slopes and the landscaping, but no signage. Upon review of the application at the last meeting, the Planning Commission requested additional details of the community arrival locations, such as grade elevations of the surrounding slopes and the distance of the walls to the sidewalk. The applicant has provided this information on this iteration in several forms. The first is a set of large folded plans in your packet, and those show the proposed monument in plan view, and that's like top looking down, as well as grade elevations of the adjacent slopes and the sidewalk. The second set of information is a set of visual simulations which depict the signage as viewed from the intersection, generally from the direction that you're going to approach the community. And then please note that there are two versions of each visual simulation, one that depicts the monument from afar and one that's a closer in view. The applicant has also provided photographs of a mock-up that they did a few weeks ago. Some of you may have seen that at the corner of Alton Parkway and Commerce Center Drive. And that's how they determine the appropriate scale and size for the signs, taking into account their adjacency next to a major arterial and located at the base of a very large slope there. In your staff report, there are also similar photographs of similar signs for recently constructed residential subdivision entry monuments. And we did also, lastly, include a photograph of an A.J. West monument sign, and that's on Rancho Parkway South, right next to the community. The proposed entry monumentation, in conjunction with the approved master landscape plan, is appropriate to the site and has been designed in a manner that is consistent with other community entrances, both in size and scale, as well as design and material. Like I mentioned, the materials are the same as what's used in A.J. West, and that's also part of Baker Ranch, same planned community. And staff's position is that this entry monumentation will define the entries of this future community in an appropriate manner. It'll let everybody know where it is, and it fits into the existing Lake Forest fabric. And with that, staff would like to recommend that the Planning Commission adopt the attached resolution approving the planned sign program. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer your question. Brooke Joy from Shea Homes is also in the audience in first row, and she's available as well. So, thank you.
Okay, any questions of staff? Seeing none, would the applicant like to address the commission?
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. As Carrie said, Brooke Doy, and I represent Shea Baker Ranch. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. I don't have anything in addition to what Carrie said, so.
Anybody questions for the applicant?
I have one question. On dimension and all.
Lake Parkway?
Yeah, is that grading now pretty close to the final slope?
At Dimension and Bake it is, yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant? No? Okay, let's bring it up here for some discussion then. Who'd like to start off? Go ahead.
I'll jump in here. I'm glad to see that the applicant took to heart what we talked about the last time they were here with this, and they've lowered those walls the 2 feet that we suggested, the maximum height from 12 to 10. I took time to actually drive the site and take a look at that, and I think the proportions, the scales are more in line with what we want to see. So with that said, I don't find anything that's really objectionable now.
Okay, thank you. Care to jump in?
You know, I like this, the proposed signs, both the plans and the staff report, and I think I'm going to support it.
Any other comments?
Just very briefly, having not seen the actual mock-up when it was there, I really appreciate the picture with the human being in it. It lets me, kind of get a better feel for it. So, and it does, like I believe it's already been stated, but it looks height appropriate based on, an actual person standing next to it. Thank you.
My first thought last time and this time, my your first look at these is that they're awful large, both somewhat in height, but also in length and the width of the thing. But then I drove by, in particular, I drove by Alton and Commerce Center, and those slopes are extremely high there. And so, after looking at that, and looking at the size and these pictures, which are very helpful, I think that the signs are probably appropriate for the location, and also on Bake and Commerce Center, because even though they're not quite as high as slopes there, but the signs are scaled down too, so I think it'll be fine.
Okay. Just a couple comments. As far as the A.J. West, and I don't think it's a fair comparison with this particular application, A.J. West had some fairly radical slopes that they were dealing with on the monument sign and the wall, and that's the reason I gave them consideration for the extra sign height. So I want to make sure, and one of the things that leads up to is that when we bring in examples of product in our community to demonstrate why we should justify doing something in another location, it'd be a good idea if we also then include the rationale that justified the deviations, and then there are none of those here. Personally, I still think the sign's on the high side. I think 12 foot is not consistent with either the intent of our sign guidelines or our retaining wall guidelines. In this particular case, the slopes somewhat mitigate the effects of the height. I can probably support it, but my bigger concern is the applicants typically want to have as big a sign as they can to draw attention to their community so they can sell their properties. And then once they're gone, they've made their money and they're on down the road, then we as a community get to live with what they imposed on the community. And when I see 10-foot and 12-foot signs, and that's effectively what these are, I don't think it's consistent with really what the guidelines, either the spirit or the direct intent of the guidelines for the retaining walls or for the sign guidelines are. So I have a little bit of difficulty with it on that, from that standpoint, and I'll leave my comments at that. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and, just for clarification, maybe I missed something here, Chairman Hughes. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing maximum 10-foot high now.
I think the one on one of them is a 12-foot, if I recall. Could be wrong. Two of them are 10 and one of them is 12. It's 12 feet above the sidewalk, and that would be the community arrival south. In another way that it can be achieved, and they've done that to a degree with the arrival south, and that is that they've sloped up to the wall. And I guess my suggestion, and what I thought when I saw this, was that the whole effect of the wall could be softened significantly by putting more slope. And if you look at the some of the basis for the retaining wall guidelines, some of the things we talked about were creating contours in front of the retaining walls that would diminish the appearance of the size of the retaining walls. And I think that's something that could be used effectively with each of these signs. And here again, the one on south, that was done to a certain degree. Nonetheless, the sign is still 12 foot above the sidewalk.
Okay. I appreciate the clarification. I'm still okay with this, and as such, then I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we adopt. Make sure I've got this correct. It would be Plan Sign Program 12-12-3032 for entry monument signs for the Shea Baker Ranch location, and close the public hearing.
I second.
Any discussion? Just one closing comment. I think this could be improved. It sounds like my fellow commissioners are going to support this, so I'll support it in this case. So, any other discussion? Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none. Motion carries. Okay, this brings us to item number 4, and this is use permit 1212-3025, the Artemis Defense Institute. This over to staff for your presentation.
Stephanie Rojas has a presentation this evening.
Good evening, Chair Hughes and members of the Planning Commission. The use permit application before you tonight is for an indoor tactical self-defense training facility. The proposed facility, which will be called Artemis Defense Institute, or ADI for short, will be located in an industrial building at the Spectrum Point Business Park. The proposed use is similar to a commercial school, which requires Planning Commission approval of a use permit. ADI will provide safety awareness and self-defense training programs for both civilians and non-civilians, such as law enforcement and military. The training programs will be offered in one of two ways. First, one-on-one training programs will be provided within the facility's virtual shooting lab. The shooting lab will consist of computer-generated simulations in which trainees use customized weapons fitted with lasers. Different scenarios will be projected onto a screen, and individuals will use the simulators to learn how to respond appropriately to a dangerous situation. Live firearms and ammunition will not be used at the proposed facility. The facility will contain 3 shooting simulators in different sizes, which are pictured in your staff report. Second, the proposed facility will also offer classroom-style group classes for up to 18 students. Classes will be scheduled primarily in the evenings and weekends and will cover a range of topics such as firearm safety and scam avoidance. In addition to the training program, the applicant proposes several other limited services. For example, the facility may be rented out to private parties and businesses for special events, and there will also be some retail sales, including limited firearm sales to paying members. Membership invitations will only be extended to individuals meeting certain criteria and demonstrating a commitment to firearm safety and education. As described in your staff report, the business does meet the city's parking requirements for commercial schools, and in addition, staff completed an additional analysis based on the facility's operational characteristics. The analysis determined that even at the facility's maximum capacity, sufficient parking will be available to accommodate the proposed use. However, to prevent potential parking issues from arising in the future, staff is recommending several conditions, including limiting group classes to 18 students maximum, which is what it's currently proposing. The proposed use will not create excess noise, and it will be compatible with other uses in the Spectrum Center Business Park. So with that, staff is recommending the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving the use permit request as conditioned, and this concludes my presentation tonight. The audience is available in the audience, the applicant, is available in the audience tonight, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Any questions of staff?
Yeah, I have one. Stephanie, I meant to drive by and check, but I didn't get it there. The street parking alongside there, is that restricted in any way, or is it? Okay. All right.
I'm not sure, actually.
Hughes, other commissioners, my name is Stephen Lieberman. I'm the chief trainer and vice president of the Artemis Defense Institute. In answer to your question, from the signage that we've seen on the street, I don't believe there is any parking restrictions on the, I guess that would be the west side of the street. Mm-hmm. That notwithstanding, I've never seen any cars parked along there, so.
Right. Typical not. I was just thinking if there was an overflow. It looks like we're kind of pushing right up against the limits. And so, all right. Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? One question.
Sure.
I did see on here, and it notes that you're not going to be selling firearms, or at least distributing the firearms that may be sold on site, although it does state that you have applied for a license to sell firearms. Is that correct?
That's correct. We actually, we do, at our offices in Aliso Viejo, we do have an FFL. That was to acquire our weapons for the simulators. Our sales are exclusively to law enforcement or members. And to become a member, you have to go through a vetting process. So we don't sell to the general public per se.
Okay. Do you do taser as well as firearm?
Taser, OC spray, and firearm.
Okay. Great, thank you. I just went to Sacramento to get our taser training. We could have
Okay,
waited a little longer.
You can come right there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of applicant? Go ahead, Jerry.
Tell us a little bit more about the firearms part of it, and I'll just preface this, but I read through the whole thing. It sounds like a great deal, and I think it would be good for the community. But I do have concerns about the firearms. I'm sure, everyone does these days, especially. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that process and, what it would take for someone to actually buy a firearm?
Sure, no, absolutely. Well, notwithstanding current law enforcement, taking them out of the equation for just a second, because they are automatically qualified to purchase firearms through us. For a civilian, which I'm sure that's what you're basically asking, to become a member, or to become considered for membership at the Defense Institute, they have to have taken a minimum of 2 classes through us to begin with. They can be recommended by another instructor from another shooting facility that we've pre-approved, or from another governmental agency. Once we've had our ability to evaluate them, then we would extend membership to them. And then they would have to pay for membership prior to purchasing a firearm. We will not be carrying an inventory of firearms per se. They would specifically tell us, I want to buy a SIG 228, and then we would order that SIG 228 for them at that point. But they would have gone through a fairly extensive vetting process.
So what would be a typical time frame? Let's say they're already a member. What's a typical time frame for them to actually get a weapon?
If they were already a member? 13 days.
Okay, so it's not an over-the-counter...
Oh, no.
And I just wanted to mention, too, because as I was reading this, I was thinking, well, where else can you buy a firearm locally? And, of course, Walmart sells firearms, and, maybe not of the kind of caliber that you do, but certainly shotguns and all that kind of stuff. And so does Big Five. So we have at least 2 other places in town that already sell firearms. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let me jump in on one other point here, just briefly, if I may. There is one section here that says family members of an ADI member living in the same residence can also be extended a membership. And it sounds like through that they can get a membership without any other qualifications.
No, that's incorrect. They could be, assuming that they've gone through the training program, the membership costs would be extended to them. That's all that. It basically waives the membership fee for other members of the family, but it's not an absolute guarantee of membership.
Okay.
Then we should have clarified that a little clearer. I apologize for that.
And forgive me, I missed your name when you came up.
Oh, Stephen Lieberman.
Okay, Stephen. All right. I had a request to speak for him, and I was from Stephen Lieberman, and I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity for Stephen to talk. Any other questions from the applicant? For the applicant?
Yes. I frequently visit the almost adjoining park, and I see your operating hours will be on weeknights and I guess evenings and weekends. Do you have, and I didn't see anything about like sound, padding. I noticed you said no live ammunition, so that's not going to be a consideration for sound, but what types of, are there going to be loud sounds? Like,
not really.
Gunfire type sounds that could, possibly...
could emanate into the park?
The park and the soccer games and whatnot?
No. Our decibel levels are below that of most industrial machineries, and it's all contained within what we call the shooting lab, which is behind the offices. And by virtue of the fact that we need to have it sort of hermetically sealed, in order for the simulators to function effectively, there's no light or sound leakage that comes out. So.
I will say the technology behind the simulators is pretty surprising.
It's staggering. It's absolutely staggering.
I was absolutely amazed. Okay.
One more just quick curiosity question. So do you have to be a member to use the facility? Like if you wanted to, you were talking about special events and things. Could a group come in there and rent it for the night?
Absolutely.
Without them being members?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, membership basically extends, it was a function of our ability to limit gun sales. We did not want to be selling to the general public per se, and we sort of had to torture the logic in order to prevent that, and we created the membership plan basically as a safety protocol. But yes, walk-ins can certainly come in. There's no individual usage on the simulators. By definition, you basically have to be with a trainer while you're on there. So, somebody wouldn't just... I really even hate to use the term video game because we really distance ourselves from the concept of a video game, but utilizing that for the purposes of this discussion, a video game, you put your quarter in and you get to play by yourself, and that's not what we're about. Everything takes place under supervision, so.
Not a game place, it's a
training center.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Of your client base, approximately what percentage or how many would be of law enforcement training versus just general public people or, clubs or whatever that might be?
Well, we've had a surprisingly robust interest from law enforcement, and law enforcement from jurisdictions that extend outside of Lake Forest. So initially I would have said to you that on-duty police officers would have represented probably between 10 and 20% of our business. Reevaluating that, it might be higher, to be quite candid with you. Now, most of that is going to be during weekdays. Weekend is primarily going to be civilian because, candidly, that's when most civilians are going to be able to take the time to come in to train. So it will be interesting to see as the year flushes out what the percentage of law enforcement actually does end up being.
Okay, this class that you conduct and will be offering, it would be similar to one if we go to one of the local shooting ranges, Rahagis or something like that, and take one of their safety classes. It would be of a similar nature. Similar nature and same rating for all practical purposes, or what?
Correct.
Okay, great. Correct. All right.
Oh, except our targets shoot back.
That's the advantage of non-live fire.
That's the advantage of having non-live fire, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
For discussion, who would like to open it up? Oh, good key, thank you. I knew you were here for a reason. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, let's bring it back up for the Commission. Anybody would like to open up?
Sure. Do we need a motion, or are we just doing discussion at this point?
Let's discuss.
Okay. Yeah, basically, I just wanted to put it out there that I am a firm believer that the most effective way to reduce gun violence is through training, and any group that has taken the time to not only do training, but to do it at the level that this appears, I am all in favor.
I'm going to jump in there right on top of that, Commissioner Bauer. I think this is a great thing given our current, situation in this country, that we need to have an awareness. And with as many, you just take a look at gun sales. Stern Ruger stock is up over 800%. Smith & Wesson's up almost 300%. Arms sales are at their highest level ever. And you know what? I just think we need to have people, if they're going to purchase weapons, they need to understand what that means. And they need to understand if they're going to use it, if they're even going to hold it, they better know what they're doing with it. So, when I saw this, I thought, wow, this could definitely be a valuable asset, not just to Lake Forest, but to the surrounding community. So I'm pleased to see this application.
Anybody else like to jump in? Any comment? I'll make a couple of comments. Number one, kind of following up on Commissioner Brewer's comment, I think probably education is the second most effective way. I think the first most effective way would be to get graphic violence out of the entertainment industry. But since that won't happen, this is probably the most practical approach to achieve that. I did just attend a similar, in no relation to the applicant, a similar facility in Sacramento last weekend, and you can't bring firearms onto the site. I was there for a taser certification, not a firearm certification, but it's a very controlled environment. The only reason that anybody knew that we were just in an office complex, and the only reason that somebody knew what was going on is they saw a light flash through the front window and saw a kid standing at the front, looking through the front window, watching us go through the training. So I only say that because from a sound standpoint, the sound is minimal. I think at least the one that we used, the sound of a gun was kind of like a cap gun. just so that, although the gun did have a kick, but here again, not relevant to where we're going. Okay, everybody's had an opportunity to make a comment on this. Does anybody like to make a motion on it?
I'll move that we approve use permit 12-12-3025 to operate an indoor tactical self-defense training facility at 11 Spectrum Point Drive.
And close the public hearing?
And close the public hearing.
Thank you.
I have a comment. Did we want to address that clause on page 42, the item about family members? Did we want to tighten that up a bit or not before we finalize this?
No, that's an excellent point, because the way that it does read does not state that family members need to follow the same qualification procedure. Would you entertain adding a clause to strengthen the... You can fill out a request to speak for him when you're done.
My name is Sandy Lieberman. I'm Stephen's partner. The theory behind that concept was that a family could come in and train together. So it really wasn't to extend a membership out per se, but it was under the same household that everyone in that household would be allowed to come in at the same price and participate with the family.
And I appreciate what you're saying, and I think where our concern comes in is if you read the last sentence in the paragraph under services provided exclusively to members, it says membership may be obtained in one of the following ways, and the fourth bullet point on one of those ways is family members of an ADI member living in the same residence can also be extended a membership without any of the other qualifications. So what we're saying is we just want to make sure that all of the members are going to have that qualification,
right.
Similar qualifications and background checks and so forth.
Sure, sure.
If I could propose just some specific language, I think if you just added with no additional fees to the end of that to show that you're specifically just saying, you still have to go with everything else, but there will be no additional fees for someone in the same house. I would be comfortable with that. I don't know.
I don't know if that's actually their intent to not charge additional fees.
I may be misunderstanding. That's what I thought Mr. Lieberman had said.
Oh.
One of the things we could do, too, is to let them work with staff and come up with the appropriate language. I don't know whether we have to approve it, whether we have to draft it right here now.
Is that something staff feels that they can address for us and achieve our objective? I think our concern has been made significantly clear here. I don't think there's any question on what our intent is. Okay.
Okay, so staff understands where we're trying to go. So,
right, so that would be you'd like a condition added to the resolution. What you're talking about is a statement in the staff report, but if you have some concern, you'd want it to be reflected as a condition in the resolution.
Correct.
Is that correct?
yeah.
Yes.
We'll work. We'll add some language in there. We can do that.
Okay.
Well, with that,
Okay, so I'll modify my motion to say that we'll approve this with the understanding that staff will work with the applicant to put a condition of approval about family members becoming members.
A qualifying condition.
Qualifying condition, exactly.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, the motion carries. Okay, we're moving right along here this evening. This brings us to item number 5. This is site development permit 11-12-2984. And looks like, Ron, this is yours.
Good evening, Chairman Hughes and members of the Planning Commission, and congratulations to Commissioners Hamilton and Brower on your appointments. This item is a request for a site development permit to construct a bridge structure between two existing light industrial buildings, a second-floor mezzanine in one of the buildings, and 2 equipment room additions to the rear of one of the buildings at 20161 and 20162 Windrow Drive. Currently, the project is composed of 2 separate parcels, each of which is developed with a 2-story building designed for light industrial use, meaning a mix of office, manufacturing, and warehouse use. The two parcels would be merged as part of a separate administrative process, a lot line adjustment, in order to eliminate the property line between the parcels and allow for construction of the bridge structure. As discussed in the staff report, the reason for this is that the building code prohibits building over a property line. The project also includes new mechanical equipment and screening on the roof of one of the buildings, and installation of a new opening and roll-up door in the wall of each building in the area underneath the bridge. The roll-up doors would be aligned and designed to facilitate transport of materials between the two buildings, which are separated by approximately 86 feet. Within this space between the buildings is a shared drive aisle, 2 rows of parking, 1 on each side of the drive aisle, and landscape planter areas adjacent to the buildings. The proposed bridge structure spans this space between the two buildings at the second floor level, maintaining the drive aisle and parking area beneath. The bridge structure would provide an enclosed pedestrian corridor connecting second floor office space in each of the buildings and a partially roofed equipment platform. Equipment to be installed on the proposed platform would be used to support the manufacturing processes of the new owner and tenant, Applied Medical, which is a manufacturer of medical devices and equipment. Additionally, 3 electrical transformers would be installed in new planter areas on the southerly side of building L201, as it's designated on the plans. In order to accommodate the bridge support columns and transformers and maintain the required drive aisle width adjacent to one of the equipment room additions, minor modifications to the parking lot are proposed, resulting in a net loss of 16 parking spaces. The project also includes new or replacement landscaping throughout the project site and new decorative paving delineating the crossing between the roll-up doors that I mentioned earlier. Lastly, the applicant is also proposing to reconfigure the building floor plans to suit their needs and to incorporate features such as a lunchroom and employee locker areas. Per the city's parking code, the reconfigured floor plan requires 194 parking stalls on the merged parcels in total, whereas the proposed project would provide 246, or a 53-space parking surplus. That is after completion of all of the proposed improvements. The project also complies with all other applicable codes and standards, including maximum building height, equipment screening and landscaping requirements, minimum setbacks, the maximum floor area as established, the maximum floor area ratio as established by the general plan. The project is also consistent with applicable general plan policies, the citywide design guidelines, and other bases for evaluation of the project, as detailed in the staff report and draft resolution. Finally, the project is exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act. In order to ensure that the proposed equipment will not have an adverse noise impact, the applicant engaged a consultant to prepare a noise study for the project. The study, which is provided as attachment 6 to your staff reports, identified several measures to ensure no adverse impacts would result. Accordingly, staff is recommending a condition of approval requiring that those measures be implemented. Additionally, staff is recommending a condition which would require a post-installation noise survey in order to verify that the installed equipment does not exceed city standards. In addition to these conditions and the standard conditions of approval, staff is recommending a requirement for recordation of a lot line adjustment as a means to merge the two lots, a planned sign program as required by our sign ordinance for the logo sign depicted on the freeway elevation drawing, and that planned sign program would come back to the commission for review and approval. And as a fail-safe, a condition of approval that would require the applicant to remedy any future parking deficiencies should that occur. Finally, staff is recommending that the commission disregard the recommendation for 4 conditions of approval included in the draft resolution. That's numbers 7, 8, 17, and 23, which based on further evaluation were determined to not be applicable to the project. These conditions were reprinted on the yellow errata sheet, which was placed on the dais earlier this evening. Looks like you all have that. With that modification to the recommended conditions, staff is recommending approval of the project based on the findings in the draft resolution. To date, no public comments on this project have been received. The applicant's team is in attendance this evening and available to answer any questions. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Any questions of staff? We start down to the Sentinel.
Okay. I know you addressed the issue of including a requirement for the lot line adjustment being done. I wanted to clarify, are both lots currently owned by the people doing the project already, and it's just a matter of cleaning up lines? Or
that's correct.
Is it a proposed purchase? They already own it?
Yes.
Okay.
Both lots are owned by Applied Medical, and it'd simply be removing the property line between the two so that it becomes a single parcel.
And then just for my own clarification, the requirement that we'd be putting in related to the lot lines would be a prereq. In other words, no breaking ground on new project until this is already done?
That's correct. It would be a condition that the lot line adjustment be recorded before building permits are issued for the project.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify more, does it have to come back before the Planning Commission?
No, sir. Lot line adjustments here in Lake Forest are processed administratively by the Public Works Department.
Okay.
Andrew?
Yeah, I couldn't figure out from the drawings if there was an open air section of the, it looks like there's some kind of these lighter pylons. I think you have a better view of it on one of the other pages, which I've lost. But is that a clear glass? It's someone can walk outside in open air along this bridge?
So the portion of the bridge structure that you're seeing in on the cover page of the plans, or this page, which is in the foreground, is the pedestrian bridge, and that's fully enclosed. So this is a glass facade, and the back side of that also has a facade. Beyond that, it's the equipment platform, which is approximately 50% open to the sky.
So it's fully contained pedestrian-wise?
Correct. It's roofed and enclosed with walls on each side, only for the pedestrian bridge portion, with the remainder being open to the sky, approximately 50%, but no walls underneath the roof of the equipment enclosure, or the equipment roof.
And I heard your parking comment saying that the parking, could you clarify the parking, your comment's just a parking again?
Sure. The project would result in a net reduction of 16 parking spaces from what is currently on the site. And after that loss of parking spaces, there would be a total of 100 and, let me find the numbers here. There'd be a total of 246 stalls provided on the site, so down from 262 that exist, versus 194 that are required by code.
Is that all due to the pylon, the support of the pedestrian bridge? Reduction? Due to that?
The loss of the 16 parking spaces is mostly due to that. There's additional spaces that are lost where the transformers are going. And behind the building, there's some reconfiguration where a space is lost, but there's also spaces added on the opposite side of the drive aisle.
Okay. And I also remember you saying that there was that additional parking study after the effect. Is that, I heard you right?
Yes, sir. The staff is recommending a condition of approval intended to ensure that the site has an adequate amount of parking in the future. So if the applicant decides to expand their business and hire more people, then in that additional hiring results in an inadequacy of parking, and say, for example, overflow onto the street, then at that point the applicant would be, per the condition, required to remedy that through various measures that could take place. For example, they could implement a van pool, or apply for shared parking, or adjust the number of employees that they have per shift.
Is there a time restriction for that to end, or is that kind of into perpetuity?
Into perpetuity, staff is recommending.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? None? Okay, would the applicant like to address us this evening? Who would give us your name and city of residence?
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Tony DeBaggi. I'm the applicant and I'm the architect of the project. I live in Newport Beach. We are very excited to do this project in Lake Forest. Applied Medical is a fast-growing company, and we are hoping to do more and more projects in the city. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have for us tonight.
Any questions of the applicant? Go ahead.
Just one. It's hard, a little bit hard to tell in the picture itself, but from the description, I think I'm understanding, and I'm hoping you can just kind of put it to rest for me. On the portion of the elevated bridge that would be containing equipment,
right?
There is it's open to the sky,
right?
But there's it's a sidewall to hide the equipment from view. Is that correct?
Right, from the freeway. Yep.
Thank you.
From the freeway and Windward Drive.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience who would like to address this item? Seeing none? Okay, let's bring it up here for discussion. Who would like to open it up? Okay, I'll open it up. I think this was really very nicely done. This is I think it's attractive treatment to this, a creative way of achieving end goal here. My hat's off to the architect and the applicant. We're happy to see you coming into the community, and clearly you're not cutting any corners to do this. Probably my only reservation would have been the monolithic appearance of the addition on the back of Building L201, but that's 280-something feet to the freeway, which would be the closest viewing point. So in this particular case, I think we can live with that without any difficulty. Other than that, I think it's well thought out. I think it's going to be attractive, and I think it's going to be a nice asset to the community. And with that, I'll give someone else an opportunity to make some comments.
I'll jump up on that one. I agree with what Chairman Hughes said. I took the time to actually, after reviewing this, to drive out to the site because I wanted to try to conceptually make sure I had my arms around it, and I like everything about this. I like, again, I second Chairman Hughes' hats off to you. It's going to be a good project. I'm sure that the new property owner, if they're new or not, I'm not sure, but they're certainly going to be thrilled with what they come up with if this is what it looks like. So I'm in favor of this.
Anybody else like to agree with me?
Sure. Let me take a stab. I share both comments, the sentiments from both comments. We love businesses here in Lake Forest, and I also drove to the site with a car full of kids, so we all enjoyed looking around. I guess I have just a little reservation on condition 35. I guess that perpetuity, I must have missed that in the review. So I would have probably discussed that at an earlier opportunity with staff. So is that something that's a normal? So I'm sorry if I'm just kind of
Certainly.
going on the fly here.
Yes, that's correct. We've used this condition before on other projects, and what we noted with this particular operation, it has quite a few employees working in shifts, so there would be that potential for changes in the shifts or something like that to occur that could exceed the parking. The way it has been described and set up at this particular point in time, it certainly works. We feel there's more than adequate parking, but this is just a measure that would let the city come in, the commission, take another look if something happens and we have parking occurring on the street or problems with our other properties.
Thank you, Gail. Any other?
Would there be any possibility to like a I don't know, some kind of time frame? It just seems kind of, and I'll let the horse die here if I am alone in these sentiments. But I'm just curious if maybe a 5-3 kind of year.
Can I jump in?
Maybe I'm asking my fellow commissioners.
Let me jump in and give you a little background. Maybe this is where you were going, Jerry? No? Okay.
I'll chime in afterwards.
One of the concerns we have in any application that comes before us is not only what its use is today, but what its future use may be. And so this gives us an opportunity to be able to review conditions as they may change, as uses change, or as maybe even ownership changes. Something may happen up there, and they decide that they're going to have this particular site, plenty of parking. 2 applications before this, not so much. So changes in their use, changes in their employment density would adversely impact parking. And so this is a condition that was created to give the city some flexibility. One of the things we want to do is we want to avoid the city having to bear the burden for parking code violations and parking code enforcements and that sort of thing. So this gives us a chance to be able to have a tool in our box that allows us to deal with future changes. Did I put too many words into a small thought? But anyway, that's the basic intent of it. Yeah, and I think you'll probably, and I recognize that this is your second meeting, but you'll probably see this occurring quite a number of times, if not on almost all occasions, where there's a possible change of use in the future. But a good thought nonetheless. Thank you.
I would just add a couple things to that. If we put a limit on any kind of a condition like this, we've negated the effectiveness of it altogether, because we don't know how long in the future this might happen. Having said that, we're not trying to limit what the applicant can do. And I want the applicant to know that. We're not trying to limit what you can do. It's just that if you opt to change your business plan at some time in the future, and we do have an overflow of parking, we'd like to be able to come back to you and work with you at that time to come up with a plan to negate it, so we don't have a lot of parking on the street that could be detrimental to the city. That's the only reason we put it in there. If we leave it out, we have no recourse. And so then your parking starts to, or whoever's we do this to, their parking starts to overflow on the streets, and then the neighbors' parking, and we don't have much that we can do about it at that point. So that's why we typically put any of these conditions in there. And so it's not to limit you, it's just so that we can keep things appropriate in the city, so we don't have these other things we have to deal with later on.
Let me jump in one more note right along the same line. We do have some projects within the community that were approved while we were under control of the county, and many of those facilities, those projects, do have extreme parking stress, adverse parking conditions right now, where in fact the parking is overflowing onto the streets and not adequate. And so what we're trying to do is be proactive. We're trying to be active planning and be able to, if we can't anticipate it, at least have an opportunity to re-review it when the conditions change. So that's kind of the background behind that. But I think I've probably said too much on that already. Anybody else have a comment?
Just very briefly. My wife wants me to get home tonight, so. But no, I think part of it is possibly just in our newness. I do agree with Commissioner Hamilton in the concern that I'm wary anytime there's a feel that we're trying to tell businesses how to run their business. At the same time, I also understand, having listened to my other three colleagues on the issue, I certainly can see where we need to be able to have some control. And my question is really for staff on the execution of, say they just go gangbusters and 5 years from now they're saying, man, we need to add another shift and we're going to have a parking issue. The mitigation issues, I get that, we need that, I'm all for it. My question is more in the execution, are we leaving them wiggle room so that they can have some control over what that mitigation is, as long as they're fixing the problem in a way that fits their business?
Absolutely. The way the conditions worded is that they would, the mitigation measure would be subject to approval of the Planning Commission, but we're not dictating it. We're listing, there's a whole host of creative ideas that can be used. So anything that they could do, from changing their shift to, as Ron mentioned, van pools, shared parking, off-site parking, there's all kinds of creative ways that it can be done. We're in no way dictating what it should be, just that they come back with a plan that shows that now that they have the need for 300 spaces, or that this is how they can accommodate that.
Sure, if you would, you'll have to fill out a request to speak for him, but you can do that afterwards.
Okay, I'm happy
Give us
to.
your name and city of residence, please.
My name is Michael Vaughn. I'm a resident of the city of Rancho Santa Margarita, Vice President and General Counsel of Applied Medical. We're very happy to be here tonight. We're very proud of the two facilities that we bought. And we very much appreciate the concern raised about the parking. We own 12 facilities in Rancho Santa Margarita. We're acutely aware of the parking issues and constraints and work very proactively to manage those issues. If we do a few things right, we hope this will be a problem. And we're very much looking forward to working with the staff and you all to solve that problem. And we're comfortable with the condition and happy to go on with it like that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to make, we'll probably going over this more than we need to, but I think it's probably worthwhile for a learning process. This particular applicant has more than enough parking places, and that's rare in the city. In the business complex I'm in, for example, we're maxed out. I think we might have one extra parking place. So if anybody makes any change whatsoever, if they even want to add one office, they can't, because we're restricted. So I think that we have to plan, just for a learning experience. We have to plan for what other developments might have, and what their existing conditions might be, and more than likely the ones you're going to see in the future are going to have no extra parking places, and we'll have to deal with that. But these gentlemen are lucky. And the way they've designed this and the way they're set up, I don't foresee them having any problem, probably well into the future, but let's wish them a lot of good luck anyway.
Great. Any other comments?
No, but I'm ready to make a motion.
Making a motion.
Okay. I'd like to go ahead and move that we approve Site Development Permit 11-12-2984 for the construction of a second floor enclosed pedestrian bridge for Applied Medical.
Close the public
Applied
hearing.
Medical, and close the public hearing. Thank you very much.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Okay, very good. That brings us to the end of our scheduled items for this evening. So let's bring it up here for comments. Mel, would you like to lead off? Maybe tell us about the Fountain Valley Triathlon, maybe, or?
I'll demur till next time. For now, I'll just say I have no comments to keep my streak going.
Gail?
Just one comment. We put a flyer on the dais for you all announcing that on Thursday, February 28th, that's our next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting. We're also going to have a public workshop on the housing element. The city has recently contracted with Veronica Tam Associates, VTM, and she will be here. We're going to start with an overview of the housing element and what's required by the state, so that we can all come up to speed. And then we're inviting members of the public to come and give their comments early on in the process about what they'd like to see included in that element. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Carol. Gail. Cheryl? None? Okay. Peggy probably doesn't want to talk again, so let's bring it up here. Any comments? We'll go right to left this time. Am I right?
I have no comment.
Andrew? None? Jerry?
No comments this evening?
No comments. Happy Valentine's Day.
Same to all of you, and so that we can keep this brief, I'll refrain from making comments, and let's adjourn the meeting until our next regularly scheduled meeting on February 28th.